Welcome again, dear students. Myself, Dr. Kaleem Ahmed, Assistant Professor, Department of Wildlife Sciences, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. In today's lecture, we will discuss the biodiversity hotspots. As we all know, species serve as a fundamental components of Earth's life support systems, upon which we all rely. However, the biodiversity of our planet, encompassing its rich variety of the life forms, is currently confronting an unprecedented crisis. Factors such as development, urbanization, pollution, and disease are significantly disrupting the interconnected web of life. Presently, species are disappearing at an alarming rate comparable to the rapid extinctions observed during the era of dinosaurs. To address this crisis effectively, it is imperative to safeguard the habitats where biodiversity thrives. However, species distributions across the globe is uneven, with certain regions hosting a high concentration of unique species found nowhere else. Sadly, many of these areas are under severe threat due to habitat destruction and other human induced activities. These regions are characterized as biodiversity hotspots, comprising where successful conservation efforts can yield substantial benefits for global biodiversity conservation. Actually, biodiversity hotspots are regions characterized by high level of the biodiversity, meaning they contain a large number of the different species, including many of them are endemic, means found nowhere else in the world. These hotspots are areas with significant ecological importance and are often rich in unique and threatened species. The concept of these biodiversity hotspots was actually introduced by a British biologist Norman Myers in 1988. There are certain criteria for an area to become a biodiversity hotspots, and to qualify as a biodiversity hotspots, a region must meet two strict criteria. The first one is that it must have at least 1500 vascular plants as endemic, which is to say that it must have a high percentage of the plant life found nowhere else in the planet. And the second, it must have 30%, or we can say or less, of its original natural vegetation. In other words, we can also say it must be a threatened. This criteria reflects actually the urgent need for conservation efforts in these regions to prevent further loss of biodiversity in these biodiversity hotspots. These biodiversity hotspots are actually distributed worldwide, and they cover only a small percentage of the Earth's land surface. Despite their relatively small size, they support an exceptionally high proportion of the world's plants and the animal species. Protecting these hotspots is actually crucial for global biodiversity conservation because it helps preserve a significant portion of Earth unique and threatened species. There are presently 36 acknowledged biodiversity hotspots, which represent the most biological rich terrestrial regions on Earth. Yet, we can also say they are also threatened. Around 2 billion people inhabit the 36 biodiversity hotspots, hosting some of the world's most poor individuals, which depend directly on healthy ecosystem for their livelihood and well-being. This is the global map actually showing the 36 biodiversity hotspots of the world. These hotspots actually play a crucial role in providing essential ecosystem services for human life, including the provision of clean water, pollination, and climate regulation. Despite hosting some of the highest human population densities globally, the relationship between people and the biodiversity is not simply a linear correlation, where more people result in greater impacts on the biodiversity. The significant impact on biodiversity arises more from human activities than just population densities. Conservation efforts in these hotspots focus on advocating for the sustainable management of these vital natural resources, promoting economic growth, and simultaneously reducing factors that actually drive violent conflicts in these biodiversity hotspots. Now, we will discuss in brief the 36 biodiversity hotspots in the next 2 3 lectures. The first, we will start from the Caribbean Islands. A biodiversity hotspots is represent an era of ecosystems contributing to their global ecological significance. These Caribbean islands, scattered across the Caribbean Sea, are characterized by diverse habitats, including rainforests, wetlands, and extensive coral reefs. Biodiversity hosting numerous endemic species that have evolved in isolation. However, the Caribbean islands face substantial threats to their unique ecosystem. Habitat loss is a primary concern, driven by the factors such as agriculture expansion, urbanization, and infrastructure development. The health of the coral reefs, crucial for marine biodiversity, is also at risk. Rising sea level temperatures attributed to climate change contribute to coral bleaching and disrupting the delicate balance of these underwater ecosystems. All 200 native amphibian species in the Caribbean islands are endemic to these regions. And it has also been found that one of the world's smallest frog, the critically endangered Makaya breeze spot land frog, is also found in this island. Historically, the Caribbean island hotspot sported 127 terrestrial mammal species, of which 23 are now considered extinct. Today, 25% of the 104 mammal species occurring in these hotspots are globally threatened. Of 565 known bird species in the Caribbean Islands hotspots, 55 are currently listed as globally threatened, and 48 of which are confined to the hotspots, and 12 of which are considered critically endangered. These includes ivory-billed woodpecker, Ridgeway hawk, and Grenada dove, with more than 600 native species of the reptiles, about 82% of which are endemic to the region. Another biodiversity hotspot is Mesoamerica, is a biodiversity hotspot spanning from southern Mexico to Panama, is a region of exceptional ecological richness and cultural diversity, encompassing a variety of ecosystem including tropical rainforest, cloud forest, and mangroves. These hotspots, characterized by high level of the biodiversity and endemism, faces significant threats primarily driven by human activities. Deforestation, often linked to agricultural expansion and logging, poses a major risk to the diverse habitat within the region. The forests of Mesoamerica are home to nearly 1120 bird species, including more than 200 species restricted to the region. These hotspots also hold roughly 440 species of the mammals, of which more than 65 of which are endemic. The area is the most diverse hotspot for reptiles, with more than 690 species found here, nearly 35% of which are endemic, with more than 550 species of amphibians, about 350 of which are endemic. This biodiversity hotspot has some 17,000 species of vascular plants, of which nearly 3,000 of which are endemic, means found nowhere else in the world. Conservation efforts in these biodiversity hotspots focus on combination of strategies, including the establishment of protected areas, sustainable land use practices, and community based initiatives. Initiatives like the Mesoamerican biological corridors aim to connect fragmented habitats, allowing for the movement of the species across the landscape. Another is Atlantic forest. The Atlantic forest, a biodiversity hotspot, is a unique and diverse ecosystem. Once expansive, it now faces severe threats from deforestation and urbanization. These hotspots harbors incredible biodiversity, including endangered species like the golden line tamarin and the woolly spider monkey. Conservation efforts in this biodiversity hotspot aim to mitigate habitat loss, restore fragmented landscapes, and protect the remaining biodiversity rich areas, encompassing the importance of preserving this ecosystem for its unique flora, fauna, and ecosystem services. The Atlantic forest has a spectacular bird diversity with more than 930 bird species, about 15% of which are found nowhere else in the world. More than 70 of 260 mammal species in the hotspots are endemic. More than 300 reptile species occurring in the hotspot, approximately 95% are endemic. Amphibian diversity is very high in the Atlantic forest, with more than 450 species recorded, and half of which are endemic. In this area, there are about 20,000 vascular plant species and about 8,000 of which are endemic. Another is Cerrado. The Cerrado is also a biodiversity hotspot, is a vast tropical savanna facing significant threats. Agriculture and urbanizations have led to extensive habitat loss, jeopardizing the region's rich biodiversity. The Cerrado is home to diverse plant and animal species, including the wolf and the giant anteater. Conservation efforts focus on sustainable land use, habitat protection, and restoration initiatives to mitigate the impacts of deforestation. Preserving this Cerrado biodiversity hotspot is crucial for maintaining its unique ecosystem, safeguarding endemic species, and ensuring the overall health of this remarkable biome. This Cerrado biodiversity hotspot is estimated to contain 12,000 plant species, with more than one third of these endemic to the region. The Cerrado has relatively high biodiversity with more than 850 species, 30 of which are endemic. One of the best known mammal species of this forest is man wolf. Nearly 1,000 of 262 species of reptiles in the Cerrado biodiversity hotspots are endemic. More than 200 species of amphibians have been recorded in this biodiversity hotspot, of which 72 are endemic. Another is Chilean winter rainfall Valvedian forests. Is also a biodiversity hotspot, is marked by ancient temperate rainforest along the Chilean coast. This unique ecosystem faces threats from logging and agriculture activities. The region is home to diverse flora and fauna, including endangered poodle deer and the elusive cocked cat. Conservation efforts emphasizes habitat protection, sustainable forestry practices, and raising awareness about the ecological importance of this hotspot. Preserving this hotspot is also important for safeguarding its extraordinary biodiversity and maintaining the ecological balance of this globally significant biome. Another is Tom's Choco Magdalena, is also a biodiversity hotspot spanning in Colombia, Ecuador, and northwest Peru. Is characterized by diverse ecosystem facing threats like deforestation and logging. The region is home to unique species such as long-battled umbrella bird and the Tom's poison frog. Conservation efforts concentrates on habitat preservation, sustainable land use, and community engagement to protect the remarkable biodiversity of this hotspot. These biodiversity hotspots also play a crucial role in the global conservation and ongoing initiatives aim to balance human development with the preservation of its exceptional ecosystem and endemic species. This biodiversity hotspot is estimated to have 11,000 vascular plant species, about 25% of which are found nowhere else in the world, means they are endemic to this particular region. The hotspot forests are globally important for bird endemism, holding about 900 total bird species, about half, or we can say 110 of which are found nowhere else in the world. Among mammals, primates are probably the best known in the hotspot. Flagship species include the three species of spider monkey and three species of bare-faced tamarins. It is estimated that there are more than 320 reptile species in the hotspot, of which 100 are endemic. Amphibian diversity is even more impressive than the reptiles diversity in this biodiversity hotspot, with more than 200 species of amphibians, about 30 of which are endemic to this biodiversity hotspot. Another is tropical lands. This biodiversity hotspot spans South America, Andean regions, featuring diverse ecosystems from high altitude grasslands to cloud forests. These hotspots hosts exceptional biodiversity, including iconic species like the Andean condor and the spectacled bear. Threats such as agriculture, mining, and climate change endanger these unique biodiversity hotspots. Conservation efforts focus on establishing protected areas, sustainable land use, and mitigating climate change impacts. Preserving the tropical land is crucial for maintaining the intricate balance of its ecosystem, safeguarding endemic species, and securing the essential services provided by these high altitude landscape for local communities and the global environment. This biodiversity hotspots is the world leader in plant endemism, with an estimated 50% of its species found nowhere else on the earth. This biodiversity hotspot is by far the most diverse regions in the world for amphibians, with approximately 980 species and more than 670 of which are endemic to this particular region. With more than 1700 bird species, one third of them are endemic. Birds are the most diverse, rich vertebrate group in the hotspot and represent another group for which diversity is greater in the tropical Andes than in any other biodiversity hotspots. The area has 570 mammal species, and no other biodiversity hotspots has this greater diversity of the mammals compared to this tropical Andes. Another is Gunian forest of West Africa. This biodiversity hotspot spans West Africa and harbors diverse ecosystem, facing threats from deforestation, logging, and agriculture. Home to unique species like the chimpanzees and the pygmy hippopotamus, this hotspot is crucial for global biodiversity conservation. This Gonian forest is estimated to contain more than 9,000 vascular plant species, of which 20% are thought to be endemic. This biodiversity hotspot is among the world foremost hotspots for mammalian diversity. An estimated 390 terrestrial species are found in this biodiversity hotspot. 48 of 117 bird species recorded in the hotspot are threatened. The diversity of the reptile species is poorly documented in Western Africa, although it is suggested that more than 200 species are found in this region. Amphibians are relatively poorly documented in the hotspot, but there are 269 recorded species and more are likely to be discovered. Of these species, more than 80 are endemic. Another is Cap Floristic region. This biodiversity hotspot spans in South Africa, is renowned for its unique flora, including the iconic fynbos vegetation. Threatened by invasive species and urbanization, this hotspot hosts diverse species like the cap sugarbird and the table mountain ghost frog. Conservation efforts in these biodiversity hotspots focus on habitat restoration, aligned species control, and sustainable land management to preserve this exceptional biodiversity. The Cap Floristic region play a vital role in global conservation, and ongoing initiatives strive to balance human activities within the protection of its extraordinary ecosystem and endemic species, contributing to the broader objective of international biodiversity conservation. Another is succulent coral, is a biodiversity hotspot in South Africa, is characterized by unique succulent plant life and faces threats from agriculture and climate change. This biodiversity hotspot, home to distinctive species like the Aleo dichotoma trees and the Namagoa chameleon. This arid region is crucial for global biodiversity conservation and monitoring. Conservation efforts in this biodiversity hotspot prioritize sustainable land use, habitat restoration, and climate resilience to protect the remarkable biodiversity of this hotspot. Preserving this biodiversity hotspot is essential for maintaining ecological balance of this area, safeguarding endemic species, and contributing to broader global conservation goals in the face of environmental challenges. This biodiversity hotspots has extraordinary high plant endemic. In total, there are more than 6,350 vascular plant species. The avifauna of these biodiversity hotspots include more than 225 species. There are roughly 75 mammalian species in the hotspot, of which two are endemic. Reptile diversity is relatively high in this biodiversity hotspots with more than 90 species, of which 15 are endemic. Amphibians are poorly represented in this biodiversity hotspots with about just 20 species. All of these species are frogs, including one endemic, the desert wren frog. With this, we end today's lecture, and in the next lecture, we will discuss the remaining biodiversity hotspots. Thank you.